Let me start with introducing myself first. My name is Obaid Ahmed. I'm the founder and CEO of Botmock. Botmock is a design, prototype, and collaboration toolset for teams who are building conversational agents, all the way from your voice chatbots to your text-based chatbots and in between. So we cover a whole lot of that. And today with me, I have the honor of having Gautam Lal from Accenture. He leads the global next-gen customer care practice at Accenture, and I'll let him introduce further.
Hey, thanks, Obaid, for having me. It's a quick introduction. Part of the consulting workforce within Accenture, look at all the opportunities on the next-gen customer care side. We have a huge initiative on the AI-powered care initiative within Accenture. So very much part of that initiative, and chatbots is definitely one of the key things which we are all working on.
Perfect. So today's session, we want to talk about digital transformation and conversational AI, how that is working, how enterprises are tackling that, how can your team start thinking about approaching those projects from ground up all the way to deployment and beyond that. Right. So to start it off, just have a quick question around what are some of the challenges that you've seen enterprise customers face when thinking about digital transformation?
Sure. So I think Kunal put it pretty well when he was walking through the whole journey that Walmart went through. I think the key thing which we've seen in the last, I would say, 1 year is enterprises have matured from the POC thinking to actual deployment of these bots. And what that has made the conversation change within the enterprises is it's no longer just an IT-led discussion. It is now changing to a pure business value-led discussion. So, you have to go in and really talk about what's the value that you are talking about implementing these kind of projects in. So one of the key things that we also noticed was as soon as this conversation changes from an IT conversation to a business conversation, the business owner now needs something more tangible. So what we went through in the earlier part of the sessions today with guided flows, someone even pointed out that isn't the flow that you made very similar to an IVR flow, something like a glorified IVR flow. Why do these kind of designs come into the market? Why do these things happen? It's because the business owner is really looking at something tangible that he or she wants to put out in the market. Try selling a business owner that, don't worry, the bot will learn on its own and respond on its own. It's not an easy sell. So what you need to really assure the business owner is that this is something which will work, which will respond in a certain way, and your brand will not be harmed by rolling this out. So that's a journey which you have to walk through with the business owners. That's a big change. It's gotten a lot of different conversations going. So that's where a lot of our focus now is.
And in terms of going on that journey, finding those use cases, do you start from, I've seen companies start from like 2 use cases or 1 use case or 10. How should you approach that problem?
Perfect. I think this is one of those questions which every business owner has. We, as practitioners, all of us started with 2 use cases, which we did as part of POC. Everybody clapped. What I call them as the hello world use cases, which as soon as an automated response came in, everybody called victory. But that's not the real world. So one of the key exercises that needs to be done is really intent analysis. Where do you get the intents from? You have a wealth of information already within the organization which you can leverage. A lot of people actually look at CRM dispositions. This is one of the best ways to start your thinking. But if you just step back, all of these organizations have a very, very mature contact center which is running. Contact center has voice calls recorded, email transcripts that are available, and they also have chat transcripts available. So as part of your journey, did you mine that data? Did you mine that data to really understand the reason and the intent for which people are calling in? That is the most important thing to do if you want to really have a good journey going forward. You not only do that exercise to understand the intent, but also do that exercise to understand the utterances related to that intent. So I heard a lot of conversation here which said that how would you go ahead and train your bot most effectively? And most of the answers came in that you basically look at the different fallout reasons which the bot really goes through, and you mine that data and you get insights. But would you not want to look at if there's a fallout which has happened with the bot, how did the agent actually resolve it? What did the agent ask, and how did he or she interpret the question to give you the right answer, right? So why is that not in our conversation? Why is that not in our process? Why is it that we're not analyzing that data? It's a wealth of data that is already sitting in your organization. So what we do with most of our customers now is we walk this journey with them. We actually analyze this data, and this insights that you get from the speech and the text analytics is awesome. I'll give you a very simple example. There was a lot of question on authentication. How do you authenticate? When do you authenticate? So if you take an example of a typical telco, they'll ask you for an account number or your landline number to authenticate. What we realized is when you did speech analytics, when people were given the option to ask alternate number, which is their mobile number, everybody was more happy. The sentiment score was much better on the speech calls. So does that make sense to then have that as a prime way of authentication? If the organization feels right, the data is there to back you up, why not? So those are typical kind of things that you can mine and then really help business owners take those judgment calls on how to go about doing it.
Yeah, so let's step back on a POC side of things. So how detailed do you think a POC should be, and how much effort and time should be spending on it? You've identified an intent, let's say, and you've gotten the stakeholders to buy into it. How deep would that POC be?
In today's world, really people have seen these bots working. I mean, I would be surprised that if you go ahead and show someone that, this is the way the bot could work, they will say, oh, wow, I've never seen this before. They're educated. They've seen tons of videos. Vendors and startups are educating the market really well, and large enterprises are in that maturity curve where they definitely understand this. So I would not spend too much time working on POCs. I would actually go ahead and simulate something off the cuff, which I can just show within a few minutes or few days. I would not spend more than 2 days on building anything for a POC.
And for that, is it because you want to get the confidence of the team up in the stakeholders to go through that? And once you have that sort of simulation going, A, what sort of tool set would you use for that? And B, just to follow on that, is at what point would you start building the team structure around it too, so that you know?
Yeah. So I think this is very critical. So the first part of the question is, what kind of tool do you use? You're showing business owners. So there are two philosophies. One is show something which is bright and shiny and looks really cool, nice. So you develop something which is very custom, or you co-create with them. So you use a tool where you sit with them in a workshop and you say, okay, let's see how this conversation will go. And you co-create a conversation along with them. Now, there are tools available. Botmock is one of those tools which we found pretty useful in doing that, where we as consultants could be logged in. The customer also could be logged in, and we could co-create on the fly. And as soon as you co-create the conversation, you can simulate it and see how it flows. So I think that changed the game a lot. We bring in a lot of design thinking, ways of conducting workshops to our customers, and this basically facilitated a lot of that co-creation aspect of the bot journey for our customers.
So I know you guys have been building other traditional systems for your customers for a while.
Sure.
So the difference between doing those kind of projects and AI-based, conversational AI specifically.
Oh, yes. So this is where the thinking has to change within our customer base. So most of our implementations used to be large ERP, CRM platforms where you basically do a lot of structured thinking. You do a lot of structured thinking, linear process designs, and then you implement a solution which pretty much gets you to 90% of what the end product should be. However, anybody and everybody in this room will agree that implementing a chatbot or a virtual assistant of any sort is definitely not in that same ball game. So you will not get something which is 90% done. So then the way you got to think of projects is how do you build in the optimization element into your solution? How do you fine-tune your bot going forward? Now, you need to fine-tune it, and you need to build that system upfront with good machine learning capabilities built into it. So one of the things that we spoke about initially was doing a lot of speech analytics. So what we realized is when you do a lot of this speech mining, you get a lot of utterances. And if you provide your developers with those utterances to really look at free flow conversation, which everybody is scared of, that, hey, if I put a free flow option here and not give a button for the customer to press, will the conversation go haywire? If you're doing a lot of that speech text analytics and mining the data in, you can actually start your machine learning exercise on a front foot, and you can really put in a lot of utterances going into the design from day one.
All right. And so before you jump into the team side of things, I have another follow-up question on that. It's, when you have just, figured out all the utterances, you have the intents, you have the data mined now, you talked about design thinking and approaching it from a design perspective. That optimization for the conversation at design level, right, how has that helped you guys in sort of getting ahead of it?
Yes. So I think what happens in most of the tools, and we heard all the speakers till now speak about, AI development is not coding anymore. It is drag and drop, and it's simple. So which is true. It is actually very simple. People can actually build bots within minutes. So it's very important to now think of how is the work that's going to flow from the conversation designers to the developers to the testers, and then how do you make it go live? Now, the way we've actually worked is when we design these tools using platforms like Botmock, what we do is we actually create a workflow so that the business users are actually signing off on every content block. As soon as they sign off on a particular flow within the whole conversation, we are able to then move it to the developers. Once the developers build it out on whatever is the chosen AI platform, it's the testers who have different journeys already mapped in BotMock that they can actually go ahead and test out. So it's a seamless flow, and I think it's very critical because otherwise you're moving work from business to IT to testing, and it breaks.
All right. So, I mean, we can talk about optimization post rollout,
Yep.
and how can that play a role in creating that experience and going the last mile, right? I mean, you have the bot out, you ran your POCs, you ran your prototyping, the design looks good, you have the approval, it's now live, your work is done.
The work starts here because this is where, while you're designing, you're building out your data analytics model as well. A lot of folks earlier today in the group discussion asked about KPIs. What KPIs do you measure? So you really look at what kind of bounce rate is happening on those bots. How much containment is each of the flows really getting you? So once the bot goes live, I think the work starts right there. You really need to start analyzing where things are going right, where things are going wrong. The initial 90 days post go live are super critical because chunk of your learning happens in that 90 days. You will fine tune your KPIs, you will fine tune your utterances, you will add in your deviation flows, your nonlinear flows, you will add all of those things in the 90 days, and then post that, it's more of, how do you cluster various intents at the back end? One intent flows into the other intent, so you'll get a lot of understanding of those things. That's how you will then go ahead.
Perfect. And just to touch base on this as well, in voice versus text chatbot platforms, we have Facebook Messenger, we have
Yes.
Apple Business Chat, we have RCS, SMS. We have 11 different that we support. But
Yep. So this is a wonderful thing. We have this saying internally within our firm, the IVR is dead, long live the IVR. So what does that really mean? We all hate the traditional DTMF IVRs. We all tried the speech IVRs. Besides the fact that they don't get it, what you're trying to say, the fact is that they also really helped us do something very specific, and that is route calls to the agents in the right way to a certain extent. Now, the traditional world of picking up a phone and reaching out to the call center and maybe hearing the IVR may not see any significant change. But I do not see why can I not use my Alexa device, why can I not use Siri to start a conversation and then seamlessly get connected to an agent. So voice will see maturity in different ways. I do not see why my Echo Dot, which is kept in my house, I can't start a conversation with that, get whatever I need, but then flow into an agent conversation, which can happen either through an Echo Dot or a call getting connected to my phone.
well, now they have glasses too today, so they announced that.
Yes.
Anyway, so this is a good question, and this is a good lead-way into the next question, which is, how do you see the future of this in the next 5 to 10 years? What kind of use cases, what kind of platforms? What's your wish list?
So I think we heard today about AI being used for sales service marketing. We had our friends talk about use cases in HR. I think the way we are looking at it is AI-powered enterprises. If you think the evolution of websites, it started with customer-facing websites, and then we moved to, the same, I could have at Accenture.com, www.accenture.com is a customer-facing website. I can then also connect to my internal portal. I can do any and everything. through my website. That's the same thing that's going to happen with chatbots. It's not going to be restricted to sales service marketing. It's going to be moving to a different level with, you're really looking at order-to-cash cycles being managed. You're going to be looking at your core IT functions being managed. We in Accenture have started getting notifications on Skype that your timesheet is due for submission. The last thing that I wanted, but that started. So I'm saying that there's no end to this thing which is happening here. Everything is up for grabs. It's not one use case. It's not two use cases. It's an AI-powered enterprise that you're looking at in the next 5 years.
Perfect. With that, we'll leave some for Q&A.
3 questions. 1.
Thank you for the conversation. My name is Rishan. I have one question. Maybe I can have one more question if I have. So I heard a lot you mentioning about not trying out POC and directly going and trying out as an actual implemented product. When I look at the way conversations are designed right now, I kind of see 2 main patterns. One is like a safe way where you have a very structured approach where you walk users in a predefined pattern using a list-based approach and all. Another way is a very open way, open mentioned, like you let the user talk whatever they want. But most of the time we start with the first one. But I feel like when you design a minimum viable product or a safe product to start with, and we use this very structured approach, how effective it is that, how effective such a method is to get the right data from the users. Because most of the time the data you get is what user clicked. You won't get user to say actually what a user want to say.
Okay.
So
yeah, I get it. So this is exactly when you start working with a business user. So what will happen is the business user will say, this is my process, right? They'll give you a process map, right? And you will mimic the process map into a conversation. I mean, like we just saw that in one of the examples that was shown here earlier today. But conversations are never linear. So when they give you the process map, go back and check how about 20 or 30 conversations around this area have happened with the call center agent on call, on chat, and on email. And that will give you a lot of insights into what people are really asking. Once you get that data and you start bringing in that insight into the conversation and showing it to business, that yes, this is the way, if you consider all of these utterances and these possible conversation flows, that's when you'll really get containment. I mean, otherwise, trust me, the happy path can actually be Google searched, and your website can actually give you the happy path.
Yeah. We think about it from a design perspective. These are the golden paths. That's where it's easiest to start with. So if you were writing a script down, you would, by default, write the path that would always work. Right? And then you can start thinking about the edge cases quickly and show them those and say, look, what happens if this is not there? Or what happens if the user does not select one of the buttons? Right? Doesn't do something that you're expecting them to do.
So you can definitely put in associated utterances for every content block that you're creating. You can have thousands of utterances that could be associated with one content block. So you can definitely do that. Sure. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Hello. Yes. When you say that rarely have business leaders seen this technology, and especially given, well, frankly, skeptics out there, wouldn't it be akin to vaporware to show them a simulation as opposed to a working proof of concept, with the understanding that there's upfront work involved in creating a proof of concept? Wouldn't it go a longer way to convince them of the value add?
Yes. So yes. If the question is that will the proof of concept help give them the right context in which you want to build out the bot? The answer is yes, provided you can actually get that level of details into your proof of concept bot. A lot of times, and I won't mince words here, a lot of times it's a vendor who's trying to sell their platform or their service to the customer. So they know only so much about that particular process. So, the use case that you will automate or simulate as part of the POC will get you, the conversation started. But would you want to spend 2 weeks building a POC? In today's time, I would think twice.
My question is more on the omni-channel context management and the flow. There is a possibility that the flow we designed for one particular channel probably may not be relevant or may not be applicable for the other channel. Sure. So when we are implementing a pure omni-channel solution, whenever the customer, we can allow the customer to hop from one channel to another channel, what are the problems actually we should look upfront and the architecture level actually we need to cater to that to build a real pure omni-channel?
True, good. That's the perfect question. So, an orchestration engine is critical for any omni-channel design. What exactly is the orchestration engine? So, when we look at channels, and let's put some of the channels. So you have Facebook Messenger, you'll have your web, the chat which is initiated on the web. You will have the mobile app based chats. You will have chats initiated through WhatsApp for business. You'll have Apple Business Chat and RCS as we speak about now. Now these are all multiple channels. Would you keep a different agent to handle all of them? The answer is no. You will have one chat agent who will handle all of these conversations. So it's very important to have, from an architecture perspective, a very strong orchestration engine in your ecosystem. This orchestration engine then filters out, what kind of media can be sent out to which channel. So it's not just what Facebook Messenger can do. It's what Facebook Messenger integrated with an orchestration engine, integrated with your agent desktop, agent app can do. That's what you should be solving for.
Thank you very much. Can I give a round of applause?